Have you ever been mid-sentence and completely lost the word you were looking for? Not a complicated word, a simple one, a word you've used 1,000 times, and for just a moment it was just gone. Most people laugh it off. Senior moment, they say. I'm just tired. It happens to everyone. But here's what nobody is telling you, and I mean nobody, not your family doctor, not the specialist you waited 3 months to see. What I'm about to share could be the most important 6 minutes of information you've ever received about your brain. Because that moment of lost words, that brief confusion when you walk into a room and can't remember why, the way following a recipe or a TV plot feels just slightly harder than it used to. Those aren't just normal aging. In many cases, they are the first whispers of something your brain has been trying to tell you for years. My name is Dr. Raymond Chen. I'm a board-certified endocrinologist and metabolic health specialist. I've spent 4 decades working in medicine, most of that time at one of the top hospital systems in the American Southwest. And I have to be completely honest with you right now, the way I will be honest with a family member sitting across from me. I spent the first 30 years of my career doing what I was trained to do. I prescribed medications. I told patients to eat every 3 hours, keep their blood sugar steady, take their statins, follow the guidelines. I believed every word of it. I was one of the best credentialed physicians in Scottsdale, and I was wrong. At 58 years old, despite everything I knew, despite every credential behind my name, I nearly had a heart attack. My metabolic markers were catastrophic. My fasting glucose was pre-diabetic. My inflammation levels were through the roof. And my memory, I noticed it too, though I didn't want to admit it. The word retrieval, the mild brain fog after lunch, I chalked it up to stress. I was a doctor. Surely I would know. That near-death experience sent me somewhere I never expected to go. I flew to Taipei to visit my elderly aunt, who still kept the handwritten medicine journals of my great-grandfather, a traditional Chinese herbalist who practiced for over 50 years. And what I found in those journals, combined with what modern neuroscience is now confirming, completely changed how I understand the human brain. I tested the principles on myself first. 4 months later, every single marker had reversed. And for the past 13 years, I've been quietly helping my patients do the same. What I want to share with you today are 6 warning signs that your brain is already in decline. Signs that most people have but dismiss entirely. And after each one, I'm going to tell you exactly what's happening inside your brain and what you can do about it. Not with expensive prescriptions, not with complicated protocols, with things you likely already have in your kitchen. Let's start with the one that brings most people to my office. Number 6, you're losing words mid-sentence. I don't mean forgetting a celebrity's name or blanking on a coworker you haven't seen in years. I mean losing ordinary words, common words. Words like umbrella or calendar or the name of a fruit you've eaten your whole life. You know the concept, you can describe it, but the word itself is just out of reach. Most people assume this is just normal aging. My brain is slowing down, that's all. And your doctor, if you even bring it up, will likely nod and say the same thing. But here's what's actually happening. There's a structure deep inside your brain called the hippocampus. Think of it as the brain's central library. Not just for memories, but for language retrieval, spatial awareness, and the ability to connect thoughts. Research published in the journal Neurology has shown that hippocampal volume begins shrinking measurably in people as young as their late 50s, and that this shrinkage accelerates dramatically with high blood sugar, chronic inflammation, and poor sleep. When you lose a word mid-sentence, you're not experiencing a normal senior moment. You may be experiencing hippocampal stress. The library is losing its filing system, and the longer it goes unaddressed, the more files get lost. The one daily action that directly supports hippocampal health. Eliminate added sugar before noon. Not forever, not completely, just before noon. Research from Harvard Medical School suggests that morning blood sugar spikes cause the greatest inflammatory damage to hippocampal tissue because cortisol levels are naturally highest in the morning, amplifying the damage. Number 5. You get lost in familiar places. Not dramatically lost, not pulled over on the highway lost. I mean the kind of lost where you're driving a route you've driven 100 times and for just a moment you feel uncertain. You second guess a turn you've made for 20 years. Or you're walking through your own neighborhood and something feels slightly disorienting. People assume they're distracted, tired, stressed, and sometimes that's true. But the hippocampus doesn't just store memories, it's also your brain's GPS. It processes spatial navigation, and when the hippocampus is under metabolic stress, spatial processing is one of the first functions to degrade. A study following over 4,000 adults at Johns Hopkins found that subtle navigation errors, the kind people laugh off, predicted measurable cognitive decline 3 to 7 years later in a significant percentage of participants. Think of it like this. Your brain's GPS system is like a satellite navigation network. When the satellites are healthy, they triangulate your position instantly and accurately. But when the network is degraded, when the signal is disrupted by chronic inflammation, the triangulation becomes imprecise. You're close to where you think you are, but not quite. The action for this sign. Start a short daily walking practice without your phone. Navigating real physical space, even just around your block, activates and strengthens hippocampal spatial circuits. 20 minutes, no GPS, no podcasts, just your brain doing what it was designed to do. Number 4. You struggle to follow complex conversations or plots. You're watching a show you enjoy and you realize you've lost track of the storyline. Or you're in a conversation with multiple people and you find yourself nodding along even though you're not entirely sure what you just agreed to. Or someone tells you something important and an hour later it's simply gone. People assume they're just not paying attention, that they're distracted by life, that the show is poorly written. But what's actually happening is a breakdown in working memory, the brain's ability to hold multiple pieces of information active at the same time while processing new information. Imagine working memory as the RAM in a computer. When you have enough RAM, you can have 10 tabs open and everything runs smoothly. When your RAM is compromised, when your brain is inflamed, when your gut microbiome is disrupted, when your blood sugar swings are chronic, the tabs start crashing. You can only hold one or two things at a time. Here's the gut-brain connection that most people have never heard. There are over 100 million nerve cells lining your digestive tract. Researchers at the Cleveland Clinic now describe the gut as the body's second brain. When your gut microbiome is damaged by processed foods, antibiotics, and high-carbohydrate diets, it produces inflammatory compounds that travel directly to the brain through the vagus nerve and begin degrading cognitive function. A study in Nature Microbiology found that elderly adults with the most diverse gut microbiomes had significantly better working memory performance than those with depleted gut bacteria. This is where my great-grandfather's journals first stunned me. He wrote extensively about the connection between the intestinal system and what he called the clarity of the mind's eye. He didn't have the science, but he had 5 decades of observation. The action for this sign? Add fermented foods to 1 meal per day. Kimchi, sauerkraut, plain kefir, miso. These directly seed your gut with the bacteria that produce neuroprotective compounds. Not expensive, not a supplement, already in most grocery stores for under $5. If what I'm sharing with you today makes sense, I want to ask you to subscribe right now and hit the like button. It takes 1 second and it helps this information reach other seniors who need it just as much as you do. And type yes in the comments if you've experienced any of the first 4 signs I've described. I read every single comment. Number 3. Your sleep has changed and your mornings feel foggy. You fall asleep fine, or maybe you don't. But either way, you wake up and your brain doesn't feel rested. There's a heaviness behind your eyes, a slowness to your thinking that doesn't fully lift until mid-morning, if it lifts at all. Some days it doesn't. Most people blame age, blame their mattress, blame the news. But here's the real mechanism. During deep sleep, specifically the slow-wave sleep phases, your brain activates a remarkable cleaning system called the glymphatic system. Think of it as the brain's overnight janitorial crew. While you sleep, cerebrospinal fluid is pumped through channels in your brain tissue, flushing out toxic waste proteins, including a compound called amyloid beta, which is the primary protein found accumulated in the brains of Alzheimer's patients. When your sleep architecture is disrupted, and chronic blood sugar instability is one of the leading disruptors of deep sleep in people over 60, the janitorial crew doesn't show up. the waste accumulates, night after night, year after year. The NIH has published research showing that even one night of poor sleep measurably increases amyloid beta levels in the brain. Imagine what 5 years of disrupted sleep does. The morning fog isn't just fatigue. It may be the residue of a brain that couldn't clean itself. The action? Avoid eating within 3 hours of bedtime. When your digestive system is active, your body cannot fully prioritize glymphatic function. This is one of the core principles of what I call the dragon cycle, my adaptation of my great-grandfather's chrononutrition principles for modern life. Timing matters as much as what you eat. The body has biological clocks, and your brain cleans itself on a schedule. Don't interrupt the schedule. Number 2. Your mood has shifted in ways that feel unfamiliar. Not sadness exactly, more like a low-level irritability that wasn't there before. A flatness, less joy in things that used to bring joy, a shorter fuse, a tendency to withdraw from social situations that used to feel easy. People assume it's depression, hormones, life circumstances, and sometimes it is. But there's a neurological dimension that almost never gets discussed. The hippocampus doesn't just govern memory and navigation. It plays a critical role in emotional regulation. And as it shrinks under metabolic stress, the brain's ability to modulate emotional responses deteriorates. At the same time, the gut, which produces approximately 90% of the body's serotonin, becomes less efficient when the microbiome is disrupted. Less serotonin production, more inflammation, more emotional dysregulation. Let me tell you about a patient of mine. I'll call her Margaret. She was 71 years old when her daughter brought her to see me in Scottsdale. Margaret was a retired school teacher, sharp, funny, deeply engaged with her grandchildren. But over the past 2 years, she had become quieter, less interested. Her daughter described it as watching the lights slowly dim. Margaret had been to 2 doctors. Both said it was age-related depression and offered antidepressants. "I don't feel sad," Margaret told me quietly during our first appointment. "I just feel less. Like there's a volume knob inside me and someone turned it down." Her fasting glucose was elevated. Her gut health markers were severely depleted. Her diet was what most people would consider healthy. Whole grains, fruit, very little fat. But her carbohydrate load was keeping her blood sugar chronically elevated, and the resulting inflammation had been quietly degrading her brain chemistry for years. The action for this sign: add 2 of the 3 dragon cycle spices I'm about to share. Turmeric and cinnamon. Turmeric contains curcumin, which research published in the American Journal of Geriatric Psychiatry found to be associated with improved memory and mood in adults over 60. Cinnamon has been shown in multiple studies to improve insulin sensitivity, and insulin resistance in the brain is now being called type 3 diabetes by researchers at Brown University because of its direct link to Alzheimer's progression. Both spices are in most kitchen cabinets right now. Use them daily. And now, number 1, the warning sign almost nobody talks about. You've started avoiding things that require planning. Not big things, small things. You used to organize family dinners without a second thought. Now the coordination feels overwhelming. You used to handle your finances, your calendar, your appointments without stress. Now there's a subtle resistance, a low-grade anxiety when you think about anything with multiple steps. You delay, you simplify, you let other people take over, and you tell yourself you're just tired. This is the warning sign I see in my clinic that breaks my heart most often. Because by the time people recognize it, the decline has usually been happening for years, and they've been slowly, quietly compensating, simplifying their lives to hide from themselves how much cognitive ground they've already lost. What's happening neurologically is a decline in executive function, the brain's ability to plan, sequence, prioritize, and execute complex tasks. Executive function is governed primarily by the prefrontal cortex, and it is profoundly sensitive to metabolic dysfunction. Chronic high blood sugar, chronic inflammation, and disrupted sleep all directly impair the neural pathways responsible for executive function. A landmark study from the Mayo Clinic followed over 2,000 adults with mild cognitive impairment and found that those who showed early deficits in planning and task initiation were significantly more likely to progress to Alzheimer's disease within 5 years than those whose primary symptom was memory loss alone. Planning deficits often predict a faster trajectory than memory deficits. Let me tell you about a man named Victor. He was 68 when I first met him, a retired civil engineer who had spent his career designing highway systems. A man whose entire professional identity was built on complex, multivariable planning. His wife brought him to see me because she'd noticed that he no longer wanted to plan their annual road trips, something he had done with elaborate detail and obvious joy for 40 years. "He just says it's too much," she told me, "but I know him. Planning used to be what made him happy." Victor had the same metabolic profile I see in almost every patient with early cognitive decline. Chronically elevated blood sugar, severely depleted gut microbiome, and a diet that was aggressively low in healthy fats. His brain was starving. Here's something that most American doctors still resist acknowledging. The brain runs most efficiently on ketones, the fuel produced when you reduce carbohydrates and your body burns fat for energy. Think of glucose as cheap, low-octane fuel that burns fast and dirty. Ketones are premium fuel that burns clean. Research from the New England Journal of Medicine has shown that mild ketosis, not the extreme version, just mild dietary ketosis, can improve cognitive function, reduce amyloid beta accumulation, and restore executive function in older adults. I put Victor on a modified Dragon Cycle protocol, reduced his carbohydrate intake in the morning, added intermittent fasting with a 12-hour overnight window, introduced the third Dragon Cycle spice, ginger, for its profound anti-inflammatory effects on the brain's glial cells. 8 weeks later, his wife called my office. "He planned our entire trip to New Mexico," she said. "Color-coded spreadsheet and everything." I cried. Victor told me at his follow-up appointment, "I didn't realize how much fog I was living in until it started to lift. It was like someone had been slowly turning off the lights for years and I hadn't noticed because it happened so gradually." That's the nature of cognitive decline. It's gradual enough that we adjust, we adapt, we explain it away, until one day the adjustment isn't enough. Before I give you your action plan, I want to be clear. I'm not your doctor, and nothing in this video is a substitute for professional medical evaluation. If you're experiencing these signs, please speak with your physician. What I'm sharing is educational, based on research, clinical experience, and the principles that reversed my own metabolic decline at 58. Here is what you can start today. Tonight, before you go to bed, stop eating. Commit to a 12-hour overnight fast. If you eat dinner at 7, don't eat again until 7 the next morning. This alone will measurably improve your glymphatic function within days. Second, tomorrow morning, add cinnamon to whatever you eat first. A 1/4 teaspoon, that's all. Third, this week, add 1 fermented food to 1 meal per day. Kimchi, kefir, miso, sauerkraut. Your gut will begin to shift within 2 weeks. Fourth, take 1 20-minute walk this week without your phone. No podcast, no GPS, just your brain, your feet, and the world around you. And fifth, remove added sugar from your morning meal starting now. Not forever, not everything, just mornings. These are not dramatic changes. They require no willpower, no expensive supplements, no prescriptions. They are the foundational principles that my great-grandfather documented by hand in journals that sat in a drawer in Taipei for 60 years, and that modern neuroscience is now validating one study at a time. I want to ask you to do one thing right now. Type the word clarity in the comments below. Just that one word. It tells me you watched this far. It tells me this information reached you, and it helps this video reach other people over 60 who are quietly experiencing these exact same signs and have no idea what they mean. Share this video with someone you love, a spouse, a sibling, a parent, a friend. The signs I described today are not talked about enough. Most people won't know to look for them until it's much harder to reverse the damage. And if you want to understand the full Dragon Cycle protocol, how the 3 spices, the time breathing, and the chrononutrition approach work together as a complete system, subscribe right now, because what I've shared today is only the beginning. I'm Dr. Raymond Chen. Your brain built everything you are. Every memory, every relationship, every moment of joy you've ever experienced lives inside it. It deserves to be protected, not with fear, but with knowledge. Take what you learned today and use it, starting tonight.